Hey y'all, Angus Wong here, and if you're wondering why I have an image for so long, it's because this is what spring in San Francisco looks like and sounds like. It's been really windy, and with the return of a lot of the summer nebulae, I figure there's no better time to go inside because I don't think I'll be able to image tonight anyways, and reprocess some of the older images that I have and also use them as an example to show you guys how to easily process nebulae. Hey everyone, I'm back inside where it's nice and warm and my face isn't being blown off by the wind. And the whole point of this video is really just to show you guys how you can easily stack your image session into a stacked file, and then take that stacked file into a program like Photoshop and bring out the details and really have a great image. And a lot of times I think that for beginners, the post-processing steps can be very challenging. So I hope that I can show you guys an easy way to go from imaging session, stacking your picture, and then processing your picture. And then and the steps that I will be showing you, they're really basic steps. I think anyone should be able to follow it because, to be quite honest with you, most of the stuff that I use as far as stacking is concerned, I leave it at default. It's if you use a program like Deep Sky Stacker, it's going to analyze your files and it's going to recommend what option you should use. And for the most part, I find those recommendations and the default setting work really well. And when it comes to the post-processing, if you follow me, you would know that I generally don't like to process too much because I personally find my images to be a little noisy. And the more I mess with it, the more the noise comes out. So I usually do less. That usually works for me. The less I mess with it, the better it turns out. So let's get started. Okay, so the first step to stacking your pictures is, well, organizing them. And this is how I usually organize my my imaging session. Well, you can do it however you want, but I like to sort of separate it by years, then by month. I'm going to go into November. This is when I first got my Optilon L Enhanced filter, and I was super excited. And I'm going to use the Heart and Soul Nebula for this example. And so as you can see here, I've separated that imaging session into bias, darks, flats, lights. Post-process is where I save my post-process file. And my ruin folder, it's images that I toss out because of either star trails or whatever. I don't really know what happened here. I'm assuming this is where I'm assuming this is pre-dawn hours. I hope, because I have no idea what's going on here. But obviously, I toss those pictures out. So let's go on with the stacking software. And the stacking software I use is Deep Sky Stacker, and generally you can leave the options alone because you're gonna mess with it later once you upload the files. But let's start with uploading our lights. And to upload our lights, we're gonna go to Open Picture Files. Oh, 1 second. Let me turn on the cursor. It'll make it easier, guys, for you to see. Cursor highlighter. Sorry. Yeah, there you go. So I'm going to go to Open Picture Files. And so these are all the light frames that I would be using. So I want to put all of them into, I'm going to open them. And then I'm going to click Check All. And this is going to check all of the frames here. And as you can see, it keeps a tally of what you've uploaded. It's telling me I've uploaded 19 light frames. Next, we're gonna go on to the dark files. You see this master dark right here? This is the master file from these individual dark files. So when you are done stacking, you will see this file. So obviously I've done this before, but for now, we are going to ignore that. I'm not gonna upload the master file, and we're just gonna restack this. And now it's telling me I've uploaded 11 dark frames. Then we're gonna do flat frames. Once again, if you stack this before, it's gonna leave a master file. So you can go ahead and ignore that. I'm just gonna ignore this. Okay. Got 40 flat frames. Then I'm gonna upload our bias frames. You want to go to offset and bias. And okay, so this is going to be our, these are going to be the files that we're going to be using to stack the image. We're going to have 19 light frames, 11 dark frames, 40 flat frames, and 40 bias frames. First thing we're going to do, we're going to click register checked pictures. And I like to go into the star detection threshold. And you need the star detection so then the software knows how to align your light frames so you don't get, multiple stars everywhere. So generally I like the software to count about 150 stars if possible. So obviously this is too many stars. I'm going to increase the detection threshold. And there's no right or wrong here. I just individually, I like using a number about 150. You can choose whatever you want, but I heard that you need to have at least anywhere from 50 to 100 stars for the alignment to work. That's what I've heard. 160, yeah, I'm fine with that. And we're gonna go into recommended settings. And this is where, Deep Sky Stacker will give you a set of recommendations based on the number of files you've uploaded, the number of darks, flat bias, etc. So it's reading my light frames and telling me that these are long exposure and possibly good signal to noise ratio. Sure. And it's telling me to use 80H debayering. Okay. By the way, whenever you see green, that means that Deep Sky Stacker is okay with it. Whenever you see red, it's telling you that you need to either adjust it or make sure you're aware that this is the option that you're choosing. It's telling me that to set the bias frame to black with a black point of 0. Generally, this doesn't really work well for me, so I'm not going to tell Deep Sky Stacker to set my black point to 0. And I'm going to leave this as red. Okay, it's telling me that I'm only stacking 19 frames. And this is the better method, apparently. So I'm going to go, yeah. Actually, I can use either or. And I'm going to stick with Sigma clipping. And it's telling me that, I've only got 11 dark frames, so I'm going to use the median combination. That's fine. And here it says, if your resulting image is too gray, then use this per channel background calibration. However, if you think that your final image will be too difficult to color balance, then you can use this RGB background calibration. I generally am okay calibrating the background myself in post-processing. So I'm going to use this. Use per channel background calibration. And I'm going to hit OK. And stacking parameter, we don't really need to change any of this stuff. Just leave it at OK. And then we're going to let it register. So what this is doing is actually going over your light frames and your calibration frames and checking the quality of them. Basically, what this is going to do is going to check out your light frames, and it's going to give you like a quality check of, you know, how round are your stars, how many big and below the star, and this is going to take maybe like a few minutes, depending on how big your session was, how many images you're uploading. So while it's doing this, I am just going to skip ahead. Okay, so Deep Sky Stacker has finished registering my files, and when it's done, you're going to see a score here, and basically it's scoring my lights, my light frames. The higher the score, the better quality that picture was. So as a matter of fact, I'm just gonna pick the file, the light frame with the highest score. And by the way, it's gonna give you a preview of it. It's not gonna show you much. It's gonna give you a score. You just need to pick the highest one, right click, and select use as reference frame. What this is going to tell the software to do is to use this particular file. You see that it's got a little asterisk here. It's going to tell the Deep Sky Stacker to use this particular file as a reference, and then align and stack all the images to the orientation of that particular file. So that is why you want to pick the file with the highest score. Next, you're going to actually stack the files. You're going to click stack checked pictures, and then this is going to give you a readout of, you know, your files, and it's telling me that I imaged this in ISO 800. Sounds about right. And my total exposure time. Now this is only counting the light frame, so I had 2 hours and 13 minutes of light exposure. Okay, I remember setting this. I'm setting my RGB channel calibration as no, because I want to use my per channel calibration. Kappa Sigma, and it's telling me that my offset in Deep Sky Stacker is bias frame. It was shot in ISO 800. Make sure that everything match. If any of the calibration frames aren't matching, it's going to be red, and it's going to tell you that, hey, you know, this is not matching. So yeah, if you see greens and blues, that means you're good to go. And I am going to click OK and just let it stack. And this will probably take a few minutes, so I'm gonna let it run and then come back when it's complete. Okay, so it's finished stacking. As you can see, this is just a preview of the stacked file. Now, nothing you do here is going to translate into the processing, so don't even worry about how this looks. This is only a preview. And the next thing you want to do, if you do nothing else, by default, Deep Sky Stacker will create an autosave TIFF file. As you can see here, it's already saved as an autosave. But however, this autosave, I believe, it's in 32 bits, and Photoshop doesn't play well with 32 bits file, so you need to resave this as a 16-bit file if you're using Photoshop. And you can do that by going over here, save picture to file, and I am going to go back to that session, that folder. I'm going to put it into post-process, and I am going to call this, I'm just going to copy the name of this folder and use that as a name. Now remember, you want to save this as a TIFF image 16-bit. So don't pick any other ones. That's the simplest answer right here. And then you're just going to hit save. And now if you go back to that folder, you should have, nope, not that. You should have right here, As you can see, I've already made several attempts. um, but this is going to be the file that you're going to be working with. Now, if you just open this TIFF file, it's not going to look like anything. But I assure you, this is a stack file and your nebulae are in there somewhere. We just need to bring it out in Photoshop. So with that, let's go over to the actual post-processing. So let's get started. But before we go into Photoshop, I want to say that there's you can call it a plugin or preset that I use in Photoshop that is super powerful. It's a sort of a derivative of the PixInsight stretching feature, and it's called the arc sine curve. And it's really easy to use, really powerful, and I like using it a lot because it's able to help bring out more details of nebulae without blowing out the stars. And I'll quickly show you how you can put that into your version of Photoshop. So first thing you want to do, you want to just Google, well, I already have it, Cloudy Nights arc sine curve, because the file is coming from the forum. And if you go in there, you just need to click and download this zip folder. Once you download it, you are going to have a zip folder here called PS arc sine curves. It's going to have these presets: arc sine 10, 30, 100, 300, 1000. And all you're going to do is you're going to find your Photoshop folder, wherever that is. For me, it's a local disk, program files, Adobe, and then this Adobe Photoshop 2021. I'm going to open that. Open up the preset folder. Then go to curves. And I'm just going to copy and paste all of this into here. That's all you're doing. It's really simple. And then when you boot up Photoshop, you should be able to see these arc sine curves in your curves presets. So with that, let's go into Photoshop. Now again, I said that this is old data that I have. When I first got the Opton L in hands, so I was super excited. It's probably not very good, but you know, I'm going to use it anyways. This is new. Okay, thank you. Open. Yeah. So the way that I process, because I don't think my images are all that good. I think I have a lot of noise. So I tend to do less because I realize that the more I do, the more I edit, the noisier my pictures get. So I tend to do really just the basic stuff. And I'm going to show you some of that basic stuff. So the first thing you want to do, in case your image isn't in 16-bit already, convert it into 16 bits. And the reason you do that is because a lot of the features in Photoshop is sort of locked away if you keep it in 32 bits. So just go to mode, 16 bits, and then you are going to choose, under method, you're going to choose exposure and gamma all the time. Okay, so you'll realize that not much has changed, but I want to talk about what do people mean by stretching. In case you haven't stretched an image before, all you're really going to do is take this data right here, this singular peak of data in your histogram, and you're going to spread it out to a wider area so we can see more details. And that's really what people mean when they say stretching. So the first thing I'm going to do, I am going to use this info panel right here, and I'm going to use this to help me with color balancing. And to do that, I'm going to first, I'm gonna create a new layer. You can do Control J to just create a new layer. Or if you're using Apple, then I think that's Command J. Once I create a new layer, I'm gonna go to Mode Adjustment, and I'm gonna go Threshold. All this is really gonna do, you're not affecting the picture in any way. You're gonna drag this bar closer to the data until you start seeing some of the brighter spots being populated. And what this is really doing is to show you which area is truly dark. You can, as a matter of fact, you can turn this on and off. So, you know, let's say that I think this area is pretty dark because it's in this threshold view it's all black. So if I turn this off, so this should be all black. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to right click on the eyedropper tool and select color sample tool. And I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to, number one, make sure that this area is really truly dark by turning this off. And yeah, that's pretty dark. I'm gonna just pick a spot right here. So what I'm doing, I've just set a black point. The next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna turn this off, and I'm just gonna pick a star that is really close to what our sun is supposed to be. Now, of course, there's no way for me to tell from this sea of stars. So I'm just gonna pick a semi-bright star. Nothing too bright. This is good. Yeah, I'm just gonna take this one. All right. Okay, now we've set our black point up here, and we are using this star as our white point. And then we're done with the threshold layer. We can toss this, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Then, so I'm going to recreate a new layer, work off of this, and the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to crop away the edges a little bit because I know that I have stacking artifacts. So I'm just going to go into the cropping tool, and I'm just going to do this a tiny bit. I'm not going to do much. And enter. Okay, that's it. So now we can begin stretching the image. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to adjustment. I'm going to go to levels, and then I'm going to drag the black slider bar, set our black points close to the peak of the data. You never want to go into the data. This is what people will call clipping, because once you go in here, once you do this, this half of the data is going to be gone. You can never get it back. So I usually just like to bring it close to the peak of the data, but not quite there. So this is fine. I'm going to hit OK. And I like to label my layers so I know what I've done, so I know that I can either go back to it or I can erase it. So then the next thing I'm going to do a stamped layer. Control Alt Shift E, and this is where downloading the presets that I talked about earlier really helps. I'm going to go into, sorry, went a little too fast. I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Curves, and then I'm going to, under Preset, select Arc Sign 10. I like using 10 because it's the least aggressive, and like I said earlier, that I think my images are really noisy. I don't need too aggressive of a stretch, otherwise they'll look pretty disgusting. So Arc Sign 10 works well for me. You're free to choose 30, 100, 300, or maybe even 1,000. It really depends on the quality of your image. For me, 10 is good enough. As you can see, the image got a little brighter, and you can also tell that the histogram, the data has been spread apart a little bit more. So I'm gonna hit OK. So once again, sort of before and after. So just pay attention to this histogram. I'm gonna call this Curve 1 Art. So I'm gonna do another stamp layer. Now what I'm gonna do I'm going to use this info panel here to help color balance my my background. And it's really easy to do that. Just go to Image, Adjustments, Levels. And I'm going to take advantage of the numbers here because remember, I set my black points and my white points. So this is telling me that I've got a little bit more green and blue from the darks, and then and also on the brights, I have a little bit more green and blue. So I'm going to set that. I'm going to try to balance this out as evenly as I can. So I am going to. So for the black points, you want this to match the lowest number. For the white points, you want this to match the brightest, the highest number. So for the red channel, I'm only going to touch the brights so that it goes to 240. You can play around with this. It can be a trial and error sort of thing. Yeah, there you go. Then I'm gonna go to my greens, and I'm gonna set the black so that it matches the 41. You'll notice that sometimes as you change the brights and the black points, you're gonna have to change the other as well. Like I said, you just kind of play around with this until you find the one that you like. But in the beginning, I just like to match it. Okay, I'm gonna call this color balance 1, CB1. And you can kind of tell that, you know, this is the before and this is the after. It's a little bit more balanced. Okay, and honestly, you are going to simply repeat this process a few times until it gets to the point where you don't think you can stretch anymore, or until you're satisfied. So all we're going to do, we're going to do this again. We're going to go to Levels, reset our black points close to the data, and make sure that you don't clip it. Call this Level 2. Give it one more arcsine curve stretch. And then I'm gonna do another color balance. So once again, I'm gonna take advantage of this info panel right here. Let's see here. I want my reds to be 247. There you go. And then I'm going to tone down my greens very little. And my blue very little. So CB2. And once again, you know, this is all, post-processing is very subjective. Nobody can tell you if you're doing it right. Nobody can tell you if you're doing it wrong. It's a personal taste. So if you think that, you know, this background, it's got too much of one channel, maybe it's got too much red, green, or blue, you can play around with it all on your own. But usually I just like to balance this out as much as I can based on this info panel. And then once I think I'm close to finished, then I'll fine tune it. So this is about as far as I want to stretch it. I don't think I need to stretch it anymore. But what I want to do next is to give my nebulae a little bit more contrast compared to the background. And this is also where I want to stress that you don't want your background to be too black, too dark, because when we're out there, you know, imaging, we tend to think that, you know, when we look up in the night sky, oh, it's completely pitch black. However, that is not the case, because I'll show you what happens if you go too far in with the darks. You will, let's just say that I want this to be really dark. as dark as I think it looks in the night sky. So I'm going to start clipping into the data. So as you can see, our background is really dark, but we're also removing a good amount of the nebulae. So it's really okay if your background is a little bit brighter, because space is not completely black. So, but I do want to give this a little bit more contrast, and you can do this by applying a S-curve. So we're done with the presets. The S-curve, you're basically going to brighten up your lights a little bit, and then you're going to tone down your darks and shadow just a little bit. And the key here is to do it slowly, but do it several times. If you do it too much, too fast, once again, your picture is going to look pretty nasty, and that's very unnatural. So just cancel. So you're going to do this just very slightly, little by little, something like this. Again, it doesn't look like much right now, but later on, when you go through your image layers again, you'll see that, oh wow, it's making a big difference. I'm just going to do this a few more times. As you can see, the nebulae are starting to become brighter and brighter, creating more contrast against the background when I do this S-curve. Let's do one more. Let's do 5 of these. Okay, so if I start turning off these S-curves layer, you can see how much of a difference it made. So this was the beginning after we were done stretching our image. So this is after 1 S-curve, 2 S-curve, 3 S-curves, 4 S-curves, and 5 S-curves. So you can see that, our background got a little darker, but our nebulae became much more highlighted. Then what I like to do next is sort of manage my Photoshop file, because the more layers you have, the bigger your file is going to be. Now I know that all of these were simply S-curves, so I'm just going to merge the layers and call this S-curves. And then I did 2 stretches, so I'm just going to combine and merge everything that says 2 into stretch number 2. Do the same here with the first stretch that I did. Okay, so we can once again just see how far we've come. So this was our original file. After 1 stretch, 2 stretch, and after our S-curves. So we're almost done actually. Next thing I want to do is I want to tone down some of these, some of the star feel. Now, if you know me, you know that I generally prefer to have stars in my images. I don't like starless pictures. I think they're a little bit, they're not natural looking. But it's a personal taste. But I do want to tone down some of this star feel, because it kind of looks like a fuzzy TV screen. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go into Select, Color Range. I'm going to go with Highlights, because the highlights will highlight, of course, most of your stars, because they're generally the brightest stuff in the picture. And I'm going to play with the fuzziness until it captures most of the stars, but leaving most of my nebulae alone. Play with the range a little bit too. You can use this preview box to take a look. I think this is fine. Okay. And then you'll see that, you know, my stars are highlighted. Then the next thing you want to do, you want to zoom in just anywhere. And you want to make sure that whatever your selection actually covers the stars. So you can see, as you can see here, it barely covers the stars. The star here, I want to make sure that it really circles around it. So I'm going to modify. I'm sorry, select, modify, expand, and I generally like to go with 2 pixels first. See how much bigger it gets. Okay, I could go a little bigger. I'm going to do this again. Expand. Okay, yeah, this is fine. Then I want to feather it so that the selection is not as sharp. And yeah, I'm just going to go with 2 pixels again. As you can see, the selection got a little bit smaller. So next thing, I'm going to go to filter, other, minimum. And this is a personal taste. You can use this preview window to see how much smaller you're making your stars to be. I'm going to go with 1 pixel first, see what it looks like. And then I'm going to zoom back out. I'm going to do Control D to deselect everything here so I can see. Okay, stars got a little smaller. So let's do it before and after. So this is with the star minimum at 1 pixel. This is without. So pretty big difference. And so it's really a personal taste as to how much stars you want to remove. So now I want to try with 2 pixels. So I'm going to undo all the way to minimum. Yeah, this is fine. So then I'm going to do this again. I'm going to do filter, other, minimum. And I'm going to see what it looks like if I do 2 pixels. Once again, I'm going to Control D to deselect so I can see. So I think I like this a little bit more. I can still see some of the bigger and brighter stars, but a lot of the fuzzier normal stars are gone. So again, this is width 2 pixel minimize. This is original. So a lot of the stars were gone. So I'm gonna go with this. I'm gonna call this star minimize star min 2.0 because of 2.0 pixels. Okay, now we're almost really done. As a touch-up, I'm gonna go to select. I'm gonna go to filter, camera raw filter. And this is usually where I do most of my touch-ups. You can, go into basics and play with the temperature tone, tint. I usually leave all this stuff alone. I don't like, see, if I start messing with the highlights, it brings out more of the noise, so I'm gonna leave that alone. Yeah, you can just play around with this to see what you like, and how you want the picture to be presented. I generally don't like to mess with saturation and vibrance because I think when you mess with saturation too much, you give it a kind of give it a fake, unnatural tone. So I'm gonna leave it. But I will make some adjustment in the curves, and this is very similar to what we were doing earlier. It's just in camera raw. So I'm going to see what happens when I brighten up the lights. As you can see, it's giving the nebulae a little bit more of a pop, and I kind of like that. Let's see what happens when we tone down some of the shadows. Again, it darkens up the background, but you don't want to darken up too much. You can pay attention to the histogram up here. The further left I go, the further the histogram will go to the left. So I don't want to go too far left. I think this is fine. I'm gonna leave it at that. Okay, details. Because I think, like I said earlier, I think my images are really noisy. So I generally push my color noise reduction to the max. Um, it takes away some of these like annoying red dots that you see. Um, again, this is all subjective, but for noise reduction, because I like to still retain fairly sharp edges if I can. I don't like to go all the way with noise reduction because then the picture gets really soft. So I generally just go no more than 30. I don't usually touch sharpening because it brings out all the imperfections in my pictures, so I leave it at that. I'll leave it at 0. And to be honest with you, I'm done. I'm gonna call this camera raw. Camera raw edit. This is a before camera raw. This is after camera raw. And yeah, I'm done. This is about as much as I generally process my images. I don't do too much of the crazy stuff because, like I said earlier, I think my images are not that good. The more I process them, the more noisier they get. So I just want to bring us back to the beginning. Let's turn all this off. So this is what we started with. After one stretch, after a second stretch, we apply our SCurves, we minimize the stars, we do a final touch-up in camera raw edit, and we're done. Hopefully you found this useful, and hopefully this will help get you prepared for the upcoming nebulae season. I'm really excited about the summer nebulae coming back because I don't think I'm a big galaxy person, and man, I miss imaging nebulae. So I hope that you guys will go out there as soon as the summer nebulae returns to our night sky, and I wish you all good health and clear skies. I'll see you guys next time. I have some pretty exciting projects lined up, and I hope to share with all of you. Anyways, clear skies, guys. Take care. Bye.